Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about whether or not it's okay for a woman to make the first move, to chat a man up, to hit on a guy. This is a question that has confused me for most of my adult life and confuses women and also confuses men, because we're told so much nonsense by people about what a woman's allowed to do versus what a man's allowed to do, and how, you know, evolution, the man is the hunter, a woman cannot hunt, a man is a hunter, therefore a woman must sit down and wait for a guy to come over, to essentially rely on the luck of the draw of, like, hopefully the guy that is interested in me will be forthcoming and let me know, because I, for goodness sake, I'm not allowed to ever act like I'm interested, because a woman is the person that has to be chased and a man must chase and keep chasing and keep chasing and just handle all of that rejection. I absolutely hate this, because I feel like it makes women act in a really specific way and men act in a really specific way, and it's almost like we're following some kind of script, and yet sometimes the script doesn't really work out in real life. We aren't all just like being approached by like fantastic men and ending up in really wonderful marriages or whatever it is that you're actually trying to achieve. Like, it's just not happening, and it's like, well, I'm doing everything right, I'm not being desperate, I'm not chasing guys, and it's not working. Today I want to tell you what I've done in the past and what worked and what didn't work. This isn't based on like scientific fact. Like, a lot of the stuff that I talk about will be research based, but this is like what I have experienced as a woman and what I think other women should also start to do. I'm not going to start telling women to definitely do this or definitely do that, because I don't believe that there is like one thing that you can do that gets you into a relationship. I think there are many things that you can do to increase your odds, but I'm not ever going to say, use this line will work on all men, or send this text message, or you must always open in exactly this way. If you open in a different way, it's not going to work. I don't really understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. It isn't logical, because we are all really different. And I think it's a good video for men who want to see like what it's like to be a woman and why we're maybe not that forthcoming when it comes to like dating, relationships and stuff, and how we're kind of told, be a bit like icier, be a bit aloof, be a bit like you've got to be a high value woman and behave in a certain way. So I'm gonna we're getting rid of all of that, and I'm just gonna tell you how it's been for me, what I experienced, and what I think people should entertain as an idea of increasing the odds of actually meeting someone and making the first move. So we're going to start off very quickly with what happened to me in my teenage years and what that taught me. My teenage years were not full of men approaching me or boys approaching me. I felt very much like, as a result of the lack of male interest, that I wasn't very attractive, and I've always been, people never believe me when I say this, I've always been quite a shy person. So when I was a teenager, my shyness probably didn't do me any favors, because it would always be the girls that were more, I don't want to say easy, because it's not an easy thing, it is more of a bubbly character, a girl who's much more friendly and open and kind of like just a different personality type, a bit more extroverted. I was always the ice queen. I'm not an ice queen, but I can see from a male perspective that the behavior that I exhibited when I was a teenager was that of a bit of an ice queen. Actually, the reality is that I wasn't very confident. I was a little bit insecure. Men didn't see that, I should say boys didn't see that, because they were teenagers, and would just generally like approach my friends, which made me feel at that age a little bit like, oh, I'm not very attractive, like I mustn't be, like if I was, boys would be attracted to me and they're not. I've since realised that the world does not work this way, and not all men are going to approach you if they think you're attractive. Sometimes men won't approach you because you're attractive and they think, she's out of my league, I can't do that. Men have so many reasons that they create not to approach women, and one of those reasons would be she's too attractive, or she's going to reject me, or I don't want to be embarrassed in front of my friends. And that doesn't just stop when a boy becomes a man, that continues into adult life. Also, a very self-aware, woke man will be concerned about being that creepy guy. So what happens is you go through life as a woman and you're approached by the guys that aren't very self-aware, aren't very woke, and who are essentially coming across as a little bit more creepy. So you're in a bar and all you're getting is this drunk guy who's like maybe on MDMA or something, and he's like thrusting up against you and you're like, oh no, go away. You and your friends are like shinnying away from this guy. No matter what you do, like it's always like this guy that seems to show up. Or you're on the street and you'll hear the classic like cat calling out of a car and you're like, I'm not interested in that type of man. And then you read things like, you are going to attract someone who's a similar level of attractiveness. And whilst there is some level of truth in that statement, I would argue that a lot of women only get approached by a certain type of man, and that type of man is not necessarily what she wants to attract. So if a woman spends the rest of her life being passive, she will stay single. Something has to change. Something has to be done. So I don't know at what point, like I'd love to say, oh, and one day I was having a meltdown and I had this amazing epiphany where I suddenly realized that I was a goddess and I went out and I pursued men and it was all wonderful. No, it didn't actually happen like that. I'd love to say it did, but I can't lie. I don't know what happened, but at some point in time, it clicked. I don't know when it clicked that men were not going to approach me and that I had to do something myself. So I started to experiment with this, usually when I was drunk. Not a good time to do this, but I approached men. And it was not necessarily in a really direct way. So sometimes it would be, I would tell a friend, let such and such know that I think he's quite attractive. Or it would be something like a text message that I'd send to a guy, and I'd just be like totally aware that this might not pan out, and it would make me cringe, it would make me feel uncomfortable, it would generally be awkward and weird, and I hated it. But it worked sometimes. Didn't always work. Sometimes I'd go too far and really like hunt a man. You know, like when guys are like, they don't take no for an answer. I became a person who was like, I don't take no for an answer from any man. They're gonna say yes to me. And I'm not saying that it's terrible. Well, it is kind of terrible because you should just respect when someone's not interested. But I became much more like proactive. Usually, as I said, not when sober, like I'm like a massive wimp, like total wimp. But anyway, I did land a couple of guys, and I feel that women should not necessarily chase men, but become very aware of like the energy that they give out to men. I've actually spoken to male clients about this, and they have said before, like, we don't really like pick up on that a woman fancies us. You could basically like walk past to the side and be like, I fancy you, and then they'd be like, oh, okay. And it's not going to make them run away if they're interested in you in the first place, or if they're interested in actually being with someone. It will make them run away if you are like, here I am, I'm available, and I want you and you alone, and I'm not going to vet you, you can do anything you like to me, I have absolutely no boundaries. If you become that person, then you are that desperate person, and that's what a lot of people will move away from, like naturally. But if you are more along the lines of, I'm available and I'm interested in you potentially, not sure, but I'm attracted to you, that's quite different to throwing everything at a person, which I have done. Doesn't work. So the last two people that I've been in relationships with, I'm talking about my relationship now, which is nearly 5 years. I think it's 5 years actually. We don't really have like a really clear starting point. We don't really do anniversaries. We don't really run by the script of life. I don't really mind if we get married or not. I don't have like a really like traditional approach to dating, but this relationship would not have happened if I didn't do something. And what I did was relatively sneaky. I knew him already, hadn't seen him for a while, and he just popped into my brain, and I was like, oh, like, I wonder where he is and what he's doing. So I added him as a friend on Facebook and sent him a message just to say, you popped up as a mutual friend. He didn't pop up as a mutual friend. I hunted him down, but you popped up as a mutual friend. I wondered how you're doing, I just wanted to check in, see if you're alive or not. So it's like, I'm hitting on you, but it's not like, hi, do you want to go on a date? It's like playful, it was direct, but it wasn't like, I don't think it's like, I don't care. Like at the time, I was like, I don't really mind like if he's not interested. Like I put my little like feeler out, and if he rejects me, I'll just move on. Like there's too much of an emphasis on rejection being like my worth, it changes my worth. Someone rejecting you doesn't change your worth. You have to work on like actually really loving yourself. And once you love yourself, people rejecting you, yeah, it stings, but it doesn't sting quite as much. So it's better, I think, to take risks and to get out of your comfort zone, because if you stay in your comfort zone, you're probably not going to get anywhere. So that's what happened with my current boyfriend. And the one before that, I wouldn't recommend this, but I'm just going to be honest with you with what I actually did. I slid into his, I don't even know, direct messages on Twitter. I don't even know what it is anymore. Like I don't really use Twitter, but I was in a show with him, so I knew I was going to see him. We'd been on a night out. I didn't have his number or anything, but we were like working together on a show. We'd been on a night out. I'd had a few drinks, and I just messaged him on Twitter saying, I fancy you, sort of, when I'm drunk. That's literally all I did. That's all I did. And then the next day I was like, oh, I'm really embarrassed, because I was really embarrassed. And then from that point on, like he pursued me. So it's really important that if you do something, that you do slightly retreat. So it's not just like really hardcore on that person. It's not like, I'm into you, I see us together, I've got this whole future planned out. It's just like dropping a little line of dangling, I say this a lot, dangling the carrot. Just dangle the carrot and then know your worth. It's that simple. If you know that you're fabulous, you can put yourself out there a little bit and then deal with it. If you don't know that you're fabulous, then we need to work on that. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that people do what I did and approach people online in that particular way. All I'm saying is that it worked for me. It might not work for you, but if you've never tried to do anything different to what you're doing right now, then you won't know. And I just don't buy into the fact that women can't be a little bit more proactive towards men. And I think men should be not more proactive towards women, but also be able to put themselves out there just a little bit and then take the feedback that's received. If you're someone who thinks that they have to chase you and chase you and chase you and that you need to do nothing, I want you to banish that idea. Like if you've been single for a long time and you've been doing that, that is probably why you're single, because a man might be reading your response, being a decent human being, he then moves away from you, and valuing himself moves away from you. That guy or that woman that just keeps pursuing and pursuing and pursuing is sort of demonstrating a bit of a lower value and a lower self-worth. So that's where the balance is. If you think you're worthy, you can put yourself out there and retreat, as I've said before. So if you're a woman who thinks like, oh, I'm 100% that person that is quite stone-faced, like cold, I'm really shy, I hate making eye contact with people. If you're in that boat, which I fall into, I just want you to do a couple of things. I want you to start to make eye contact with people in general. And I want you to start to speak to people in general so that you become more comfortable actually talking to people that you don't know. So you could be in a coffee shop and you just make an observation like, oh wow, the coffee's a good price here. Or you see what they're drinking, you're like, that looks like an interesting drink. What are you drinking? So you are not actively and really obviously like hitting on people. And it doesn't really matter whether you at that point fancy someone. It's about becoming comfortable with being much more communicative with the opposite sex. And if you need to start with someone, if you're heterosexual and you need to start with someone of your own sex just to like get comfortable with generally speaking to people, start there. Know where you're at and make little baby steps towards just being much more open, because people who are very open are much more approachable. So you kind of have to become someone that isn't the terrifying one within a group. If a guy's on a night out and you're the like, if you're like really like well dressed and you're like sat in a certain way and you're just like sort of exuding an air of like sophistication, but you're also on your phone looking a bit bored, not really like feel like you're just a little bit aloof, you might be sat there thinking like, oh god, I feel like I'm in a really fancy bar, I need to act a certain way, I feel really uncomfortable actually. He might not see that, he might just see aloof. Like, you have to bear in mind that people aren't necessarily that great at like picking up on what's going on with you. So if you're with your friends, you're the smiley one, you're the chatty one, when you see people, you're just generally a little bit more smiling at strangers, making eye contact with strangers, just start to like open up, being a little bit more approachable. If you want to do something that's a bit more direct, I would suggest something, it's still not that direct, but I would suggest ask a man for an act of service. And then if you're watching this, be aware that when a woman asks you for an act of service and you don't know her, or even if you do know her, that maybe this is communicating something. It might not be, so we have to be careful, but it might be communicating something like, I want to get to know you and I want you to help me with this thing because I'm trying to communicate something on some sort of a level. Doesn't always translate, but say you see a cute guy in the street and you're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Oh, excuse me, I just saw you crossing across the street and you look like you know where you're going. I'm kind of a little bit lost here. Do you have any idea where, and just, where, you might know where it is. It's a little bit sneaky, I know, but you ask for his help. And then when he gives you like the directions or the help, you can be like, oh, thank you so much, you've been so kind. My name's Abby, by the way. And at that point, hopefully the penny will drop and he will be like, oh, and if not, he'll just be, whatever, it doesn't matter. In my mind, I'll be like, all right then, see you later. I'll move on to the next person. Like, I genuinely think that we can start to have more conversations with men. We can start to be a little bit more open. It's more to like help you to meet more people, because I just find it so irritating that we're sat there thinking, I can't approach a man. He has to come to me. And then we have to take what we're given, and what we're given is a drunk guy on MDMA with his shirt half off in Tiger. Like, I mean, why are we in Tiger? But do you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, like, it's so frustrating to be in that situation. And I just think that we should start to lean in to the possibility that we can approach men or become super good at getting those men to approach us. It could be something like you see a guy and you're with your friends, or you see a group of guys and you go over and you're like, oh guys, we're wondering, could you take a photograph of us? And then you are there, you're getting your photograph taken. Oh, thank you so much. You also get a read on like how helpful that person is. So you're not like throwing yourself at him. And then you can be like, thanks so much, we'll speak to you later, or like leave it really open. And you know, they have the opportunity then to come over to you and do something. They might be like, can you take a photo of us? And then it becomes, you know, you can escalate from that point. Like, don't worry too much about the end point. At the moment, it is literally just getting into conversation with people. And yeah, right now, it's not really the best time. So my strategy for now would be to connect with more people online and to actually speak to people online a little bit more with the view in mind of maybe this could become something. Take a leap, message someone that you've been interested in, see how they're doing. You don't have to be like, hey, just messaging you because I fancy you. You don't have to go to that level of where I used to go, but you can do more, I'm sure, than probably what you're doing at this exact moment in time. So that's all I'm going to share with you for today. But if you're interested in any one-on-one dating coaching, you can just head on over to my website. The way I work with clients is very much a bespoke thing. So what I'm doing with one person will be slightly different to what I'm doing with the next. I will help you to work towards increasing your odds of getting into that long-term monogamous relationship that you totally deserve. And before I head off, I just want to let you know that you can follow me on social media at Abby Blears. I do like Instagram Reels, and I do put out content on a semi-regular basis. So head on over to my Instagram if you're interested in having a look at all of that. I hope you have an awesome day. Bye-bye.